Chapter 4, The Deployment. The barracks smelled like old boot leather and cheap aftershave. A couple of bunk beds, a footlocker shoved against the wall, and a wooden desk covered in crumpled MRE wrappers made up Shane and Loran's little slice of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. It wasn't much, but after almost 2 years in the Army, it was home. Shane sat on the bottom bunk, rolling a cigarette between his fingers. He hadn't lit it yet, just something to do with his hands. Loran stood by the desk, pulling off his BDU top and tossing it onto the chair. The briefing had barely ended an hour ago, and their heads were still spinning. "Bosnia," Loran said, dragging the word out like he was still trying to wrap his head around it. "Man, you believe that shit?" Shane smirked. "Ain't exactly what I pictured when I signed up. Thought we'd be drinking margaritas in the Gulf or something. Now we're gonna freeze our asses off in the Balkans." Loran let out a sharp laugh. "Hell, I don't even know where the Balkans are." Shane pointed to the laminated world map taped to the wall. "Over there. Europe. Kinda." Loran leaned in, squinting at the tiny letters. "Damn, we really are going to the ass end of nowhere." The excitement and nerves settled between them like a thick cloud. This was it, their first real mission. Up until now, it had been training exercises, endless drills, and the occasional field op that barely felt like the real thing. But this was different. "They said we're flying out in 2 weeks," Shane muttered, flicking his unlit cigarette against his knee. "You catch everything in the briefing?" Loran scoffed. "Man, I was trying not to fall asleep. But yeah, peacekeeping and all that jazz. We're supposed to keep those crazy bastards from killing each other." "Yeah." Shane leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. "They gave us the rundown, Operation Joint Guard. NATO's been over there since '95, and now it's our turn to take over from the I-4 guys. We're going in with the 1st Armored, mostly running patrols out of Tuzla." Loran snorted. "Patrols, huh? That's a nice way of saying drive around and pray you don't hit a landmine." Shane chuckled, but there wasn't much humor in it. The captain hadn't sugarcoated it. There were still plenty of landmines left over from the war. And snipers. And paramilitary groups who weren't too happy about NATO babysitting their country. "They said we gotta enforce the Dayton Peace Accords," Shane continued, running through the briefing in his head. "Means making sure the Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks stick to their sides, don't start no trouble. If they do, we step in." Loran flopped down on his bed, hands behind his head. "Step in, huh? Ain't we supposed to be peacekeepers?" Shane shrugged. "Peacekeepers with M16s. Rules of engagement say we can return fire if we're threatened. We're not going in guns blazing, but if shit hits the fan, we hold our ground." Loran sighed, staring at the ceiling. "Man, I just don't want to get stuck doing some bullshit checkpoint duty the whole time." "Better than getting shot at." "Maybe," Loran grinned, "but checkpoints sound boring as hell. You think we'll see any action?" Shane hesitated. The truth was, he didn't know what to expect. Bosnia wasn't an active war zone anymore, but that didn't mean it was safe. "Maybe," he admitted. "Intel says most of the big players agreed to the peace deal, but there's still rogue militias out there, Serbian paramilitaries, Croat hardliners, warlords who don't want to give up their power. If we run into them, it won't be pretty." Loran whistled low. "Shit, man. And here I was thinking we'd be throwing sandbags, handing out food to orphans, maybe see some exotic ankles." Shane smirked. "We'll probably do that too, but I think you got that confused with Afghanistan." Loran grinned. "Really? Okay, big shot, tell me. Where the fuck's Afghanistan?" He gestured to the map. Shane rolled his eyes. "It's gotta be somewhere." He shifted forward, resting his arms on his knees. "Could be worse. We're not infantry. We're not front line." Loran snorted. "Yeah, tell that to the guys who got ambushed last month." Shane didn't have a response for that. Because it was true. Everyone knew Bosnia wasn't supposed to be an active combat deployment, but anyone who actually paid attention to the situation knew that didn't mean shit. Peacekeeping mission, Shane muttered, the phrase tasting bitter. Right, Loran said, deadpan, because everyone over there is real peaceful. They sat in silence for a bit, the weight of it all settling in. Two 20-year-old kids from Oklahoma were about to ship out to a place they'd barely heard of 6 months ago. You talked to your mom yet? Shane asked. Loran exhaled hard. Nah, I will though. She's gonna lose her damn mind. Shane nodded. He'd called his own folks earlier. His dad had just grunted like it was no big deal. His mom had said she was proud but made him promise to write. Loran finally sighed, shoving the lighter into his pocket. Gonna hit the showers. He pushed himself up and stretched, rolling his shoulders like he was shaking off a bad feeling. You coming? Nah, I'll go later. Loran nodded, grabbed his towel and headed out the door, leaving Shane alone with his thoughts. He let out a slow breath, staring down at his hands. 3 years in the army, and it all came down to this. He thought back to the briefing, the way the CO had laid it all out, what their unit's role would be, the risks, the reality of the mission. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rolling the cigarette between his fingers again. Bosnia. The word just refused to feel real. SFOR. Stabilization Force. That's what they were being sent in for. Bosnia was still a mess after the Dayton Accords were signed in late '95. NATO had already sent in the first wave, I-4, the implementation force, to enforce the ceasefire between the Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks. Now, the job of SFOR was to keep things from falling apart again. They were supposed to ensure compliance with the peace agreements, monitor demilitarization, and assist with rebuilding efforts. But none of that changed the fact that Bosnia was still a war-torn wreck. Landmines were everywhere. Ethnic tensions were still high. And even though NATO had declared the mission a success so far, there were plenty of stories floating around, stories about ambushes, sniper attacks, and locals who still saw American soldiers as enemies. Their unit, part of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, was being sent to Tuzla. Their job? Patrol routes, escort supply convoys, and keep an eye on designated checkpoints. Basically, make sure nobody started shooting again. Shane exhaled and leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for just a second. Peacekeeping, right. This wasn't training anymore. This was the real thing. And ready or not, they were going. The summer heat was thick and heavy, the kind that made the air shimmer over the baseball field. Cicadas droned in the distance, their song stretching long and lazy over the Oklahoma afternoon. Shane sat back on the splintered wooden bleachers, one boot propped up against the bench in front of him, arms draped over the seat behind him. The sweat on his t-shirt stuck to his back, but he barely noticed. He was used to it. Loran, sitting beside him, had his arms resting on his knees, eyes scanning the field, not for the game, but for the girls walking past the chain-link fence. Damn, he muttered, whistling low under his breath as a group of them wandered by, laughing about something. That one in the white tank, I swear to God, man, she looked right at me. Shane didn't even glance up. She ain't looking at you. You're blind, Alexander. Loran leaned back, smirking. Course, can't blame her. It's hard not to look. Shane shook his head. You got it hard for a new girl every damn day. Loran scoffed. Nah, man, I'm just showing appreciation. World's full of beauty and I'm just a man trying to respect it. Shane snorted. That what you call it? Loran grinned. Hey, if it works, it works. They fell into silence, watching as the team on the field wrapped up practice. A few players lingered, tossing a ball back and forth, the sound of leather meeting leather sharp against the slow churn of cicadas. The scoreboards peeling paint caught the last of the sunlight, the numbers faded from too many summers. Beyond the outfield fence, the Del City skyline, if you could call it that, stretched out toward the horizon, a mix of old gas stations, mom and pop diners, and the ever-present hum of the highway. "You really think you'll be a soldier someday?" Loran asked, voice quieter now. "I mean, you kept talking about it when them folks from the infantry school came with applications last week." Shane turned his head, watching him. His friend's curly brown hair was damp with sweat, his cheeks smudged with dirt from messing around earlier. His fingers idly traced patterns in the dust on the bench beside him. "Yeah." Loran glanced at him. "You sure?" Shane nodded. "Always been sure." Loran was quiet for a long time before he said, "Guess that means I'll be one too." Shane frowned slightly. "You don't have to." Loran just shrugged. "Yeah, I do. That's the only way I'll get to see Nashville." They sat there in silence, the weight of those words settling between them. Then, without warning, Loran smacked Shane's arm hard enough to make him grunt. "Come on, we gotta get home before your mom freaks out." Shane groaned, rubbing his arm. "Jesus, Tay, you got hands like a goddamn bear." Loran snickered. "Yeah, well, maybe if you actually did some push-ups, you wouldn't be so soft." "I ain't soft," Shane protested, standing up. Keep telling yourself that." They hopped off the bleachers and started walking back, their pace slow, unhurried. The air smelled like cut grass and sun-baked dirt, the way it always did in late summer. "Think we'll ever get out of here?" Loran asked suddenly. Shane glanced at him. "Yeah." Loran kicked a rock down the sidewalk. "How do you know?" Shane shrugged. "Just do." Loran was quiet for a moment, then muttered, "Hope you're right." Shane clapped him on the shoulder. "You know I am." Loran scoffed but didn't pull away. By the time they reached the road leading back to Shane's house, the sun was beginning to sink, painting the sky in streaks of gold and orange. The town was quiet, the way it always was in the evenings, with only the distant hum of a truck engine and the faint barking of a dog somewhere in the distance. Loran bumped his shoulder against Shane's as they walked. "Race you back," Shane smirked. "You'll lose." "Hell, I will." And with that, they took off sprinting, laughter trailing behind them like dust in the wind. As they disappeared from view, the dust did indeed swirl while the winds carried it away. Far, far away, where the seasons had changed and where time's wheel had spun longer than the boys would care to admit. "Move your ass, Private!" Shane's legs burned like fire as he pushed himself up the last stretch of the obstacle course, breath coming in sharp, ragged gulps. His muscles screamed in protest, sweat dripping down his back and soaking through the standard-issue gray Army PT shirt. He reached up, fingers scraping for purchase on the wooden ledge, and with one last grunt, he heaved himself over. The second his boots hit the platform, he rolled onto his back, sucking in air like it was the first he'd ever breathed. A second later, Loran landed beside him with a loud thud, his own breath coming in ragged gasps. He flopped onto his side, chest heaving. "Holy shit," Loran wheezed, rolling onto his back. "We're insane." Shane grinned despite the exhaustion, propping himself up on one elbow. "Come on, Tay, don't tell me you're already tapped out." Loran turned his head and shot him a glare. Blue eyes narrowed. His face was flushed from exertion, beads of sweat rolling down from his buzzed brown hair. His normally pale complexion had deepened into a sunburned red over the last few weeks of relentless training, and dirt smudged across his jaw and forehead. "Go fuck yourself, Alexander." Shane laughed, and Loran, after a second of pretending to be pissed, cracked a grin. They barely had a moment to breathe before the drill sergeant's voice cut through the air like a whip. "You think this is break time? Get off your damn asses and move." The two scrambled to their feet, Shane nearly tripping over himself in the process. Loran groaned but took off running again, muttering under his breath, "Jesus, this guy's got a hard-on for making us suffer." The next obstacle was the rope climb, and by this point in training, they had it down to muscle memory. Shane jumped first, wrapping his legs around the thick rope and pulling himself up hand over hand. Loran was right behind him, his lean frame making him quicker at climbing than most of the bulkier guys in their unit. Shane reached the top first, touching the beam, and looked down to see Loran smirking up at him. "Didn't think you had it in you, country boy." "Shut up, Tay," Shane said, but he was grinning as he climbed back down. By the time they were done with the course, they were both drenched in sweat, their gray shirts darkened and clinging to their backs. They collapsed onto the dirt near the other recruits, panting, barely able to sit upright. Loran yanked his shirt away from his chest. "Man, I swear I'm gonna die out here." Shane chuckled, stretching his legs out. "Nah, you'll survive." Loran rolled his eyes. "Yeah, barely." They didn't have long to sit before their drill sergeant, Sergeant Hanley, stomped over, his boots kicking up dust. "On your feet, ladies. You're not done yet." A collective groan rippled through the group, but no one dared say anything loud enough for Hanley to hear. Shane and Loran exchanged a look, then hauled themselves up, ignoring the ache in their muscles. The next part of the day was hand-to-hand combat training, something Shane had been looking forward to. They lined up in pairs, fists up, and got to work. Shane ended up sparring with a guy from New Jersey named Vance, while Loran got stuck with a broad-shouldered recruit from Texas who looked like he'd been lifting weights since birth. Shane dodged a swing from Vance, ducking low before driving his shoulder into the guy's chest. They grappled for a moment before Shane managed to sweep his leg under Vance's and send him sprawling onto the mat. Nearby, Loran wasn't faring as well. Shane turned in time to see Loran hit the ground hard, letting out a grunt as the big Texan knocked him flat on his back. "Damn, Tay," Shane called out. "You gonna let him do you like that?" Loran glared up at him. "Eat shit, Shane." Shane snickered but helped him up once the drill was over. By the end of the day, every part of Shane's body ached, and he was sure his legs would give out at any moment. The sun had started to dip, painting the sky in deep orange, and all the recruits shuffled toward the barracks, some limping, some groaning, all exhausted. Loran walked beside him, stretching out his arm. "Well, that sucked," Shane smirked. "What, getting your ass handed to you?" Loran shot him a look. "Watch it, Alexander, or I'm shoving your face in the mud next time we're on the course." "Jesus, at least try pulling yourself into the 90s, Shane just laughed, clapping a hand on Loran's shoulder. "Come on, man, Chow Hall's calling our names." As they walked, Shane took a moment to glance at Loran. He looked the same as always, tall and wiry, built more for speed than brute strength. His brown hair looked glossy under the harsh camp sun. His face was lean, his nose slightly crooked from a baseball accident when they were kids. His uniform, like Shane's, was drenched in sweat and dust, but despite all of it, he still had that smirk on his face, the one that had been there since they were kids. Shane shook his head. If nothing else, at least they were going through this hell together. Shane woke up with a stiff neck, blinking against the dim glow of the hallway light filtering in through the door. He shifted in his chair, stretching out the tight muscles in his back. Across the room, Loran lay on his bed, curled on his side, facing the wall. They weren't kids anymore. This wasn't the country. There were no toy guns, no ma trying to get you to Sunday church, no farm work, no playing in the mud. Nah, he was back where he'd dreamed of being. Somehow, back then, this dream felt a lot brighter than pale walls, strict meal times, and very real bullet wounds. Shane stared at him for a long moment, a lump forming in his throat. Loran never wanted this. He never dreamed about the army the way Shane had. He never spent his childhood memorizing old war stories, watching every documentary he could find. The only reason Loran had signed up was because Shane did, and now they were going to Bosnia together. Shane ran a hand over his face, swallowing hard. "This is my fault. The walls were lined with maps of Bosnia-Herzegovina, red and blue markers tracing routes, supply zones, and conflict areas. Shane sat with Loran and the rest of their unit, arms crossed, boots planted firmly on the tile floor. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed as Captain Holloway, a broad-shouldered man with a permanent scowl, tapped a long pointer against a map tacked to the board. All right, listen up, maggots. As y'all know, we're deploying as part of Operation Joint Guard, continuing the NATO mission under the Dayton Peace Accords. Now, Bosnia ain't an active war zone anymore, but don't let that fool you. This place is still a powder keg. You got Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs all living side by side, and a whole lot of folks still ain't happy about it. There are minefields, rogue paramilitary groups, and civilians who see us as either saviors or invaders, depending on who you ask. Shane shifted in his seat, absorbing every word. He wasn't scared, not exactly, but the weight of it settled deep in his chest. Y'all be stationed in Tuzla, Holloway continued, pointing to a northern region of Bosnia. We're responsible for stability operations, security patrols, convoy escorts, keeping an eye on the local police and military to make sure nobody starts trouble. Rules of engagement are strict. We are not here to fight a war. We're here to keep the peace. You do not fire unless absolutely necessary. If you see something suspicious, you report it. You do not go cowboy on me. Got it? A chorus of "yes, sir" rippled through the room. Good. Gear up, pack smart, and say your goodbyes. Wheels up in 48 hours. Back in their barracks, Shane sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at the rotary phone on the small desk beside him. The dim light from the desk lamp cast long shadows against the wall. Loran was across the room, flipping through a magazine, boots kicked up on his footlocker. You calling your folks? Loran asked without looking up. Yeah, Shane muttered. He rubbed the back of his neck before picking up the receiver and dialing home. The line rang twice before his mom answered. Shane, baby, oh my lord, I was hoping you'd call. Shane smiled, leaning back against the wall. Hey mama, how y'all doing? Oh, we're all right. Your daddy's out back fixing the fence again. Storm knocked it down last week. You eatin' enough? You taking care of yourself? Yes, ma'am, Shane said, chuckling. Army feeds us just fine, ain't starving yet. She sighed, but he could hear the smile in her voice. Where are they sending you, Shane? When do you leave? He hesitated, debating whether to soften the truth. Bosnia. We leave in a couple days. Silence, then a quiet, worried, oh. Mama, it ain't as bad as you're thinking, Shane said quickly. The war's over. We're just going in to make sure things stay quiet. It's peacekeeping, not fighting. Shane, he closed his eyes, resting his head against the wall. Mama, I promise I'll be all right. Her voice wavered. I just don't want you getting caught up in something dangerous. We've been seeing things on the news. Ain't like that, Shane interrupted gently. They make it sound worse than it is. Most of the fighting's done. We're just keeping folks from starting trouble again. A long pause. Then, you sure? Yes, ma'am. He heard her sigh, then shuffle the phone. A second later, his father's deep voice rumbled through the line. Shane, Dad. You ready? Shane exhaled. Yeah. You nervous? He hesitated for half a second. No, sir. His father grunted. Good. You keep your head on straight, listen to your CO, and watch out for your men. That's your job now. Yes, sir. Don't take any unnecessary risks. You ain't gotta prove nothing to nobody. Shane felt his throat tighten. His father wasn't the type to say, I love you outright, but this was as close as it got. I know, Dad. A beat of silence passed, and then his father cleared his throat. All right. I'll let your mama back on. Another shuffle, and his mother's voice returned, softer now. You write to us when you can, all right? I will. And you come home safe, Shane Alexander. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. Love you, baby. Love you too, Mama. He hung up slowly, staring at the phone for a long moment before sighing and rubbing his hands over his face. Across the room, Loran finally looked up from his magazine. You good? Shane scoffed, shaking his head. You ever try lying to your mama and making her believe it? Loran smirked. Every damn day growing up. Shane huffed a laugh. Yeah, well, she didn't buy it, but she let me have it anyway. Loran set the magazine down. They worried? Of course they're worried. Mama's acting like I'm marching straight into hell. Loran nodded, picking at a loose thread on his uniform. Yeah, my folks were the same way. Shane glanced at him. What did you tell him? Loran shrugged. Told him I'd be fine. And they believed you? Hell no. Loran grinned. But what else am I supposed to say? Hey, Mom, I might step on a landmine or get shot by some pissed-off militia guy? Nah. Better to just let 'em think we're gonna be babysitting some checkpoint all day. Shane let out a low chuckle. Yeah, guess so. A comfortable silence settled between them before Loran stretched and stood up. I'm hitting the showers. You coming? Nah, Shane said, leaning back in his chair. Gonna sit here a bit. Loran nodded, grabbing his towel. Don't fall asleep sitting up again. You snore like a goddamn chainsaw. Shane smirked, watching as Loran disappeared into the hall. The room felt quieter now, almost too still. Shane exhaled, staring at his boots. He was excited. This was what he'd trained for. But deep down, beneath the bravado, he knew there were things no amount of training could prepare them for. He leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. In 2 days, they'd be halfway across the world. And all he could do now was wait. 2 days felt like 2 seconds. Shane wasn't sure he'd ever felt time move that fast. It never did during training, and it sure as hell never did whenever he was on course. The hum of the C-130's engines thrummed beneath their boots as Shane and Loran stepped onto the plane, rucksacks slung over their shoulders packed tight with gear and, as their sergeant had insisted, extra socks. Inside, the rest of their unit was already settling in. Some sprawled across the webbing seats, others stood around talking, their voices carrying over the roar of the aircraft. The mood was a mix of excitement, nerves, and cocky bravado. Man, I can't wait to test out the new M4s in the field, Martinez said, rubbing his hands together. Been stuck with that damn M16A2 too long. Yeah, because the peacekeeping mission's totally gonna give you a reason to shoot, Brown scoffed. Hey, you never know, Martinez shot back. Could get into some shit. Better hope not, Dawson muttered, strapping himself in. I'd rather be bored than get shot at. A couple of the guys nodded in agreement, but Tanner, loud, always talking Tanner, grinned as he leaned back against the webbing. Man, I ain't worried about none of that. I'm in it for them tan honeys. Shane closed his eyes, already regretting where this conversation was going. Tan girls? McBride frowned. Yeah, man, you know, exotic, Tanner said, waggling his eyebrows. Dark eyes, dark hair, real soft-spoken, always in those big sheets. Martinez snorted. You dumbass, you think Bosnia's full of Arabs? Isn't it? Tanner asked, genuinely confused. McBride groaned. Jesus Christ, no. But like, it's in the Middle East, right? Tanner said. Near Iraq and shit? Shane rubbed his temples. Bosnia is not in the Middle East, you absolute fucking idiot, Brown said. It's in Europe. Tanner squinted. Wait, so, like, Afghanistan? I think so, Dawson muttered. Oh, fuck, no, McBride groaned. Man, I don't fucking know, all right? All them places blend together, Tanner huffed. Bosnia, Pakistan, Ukraine, fucking Kuwait, same shit. You just named 4 places that got nothing to do with each other, McBride said, exasperated. Well, whatever, Tanner said, waving them off. Still bet they got some fine-ass women over there. Martinez shook his head. You're a goddamn lost cause, man. The argument kept going, bouncing between who knew what about Bosnia, the war, and whether the food was going to be any good. Some guys stayed quiet, just listening, lost in their own thoughts. A couple stared at the floor, hands folded in their laps, the reality of deployment finally settling in. Loran had been in on the ribbing, laughing right along with the others, but then his attention slid sideways. He turned to Shane, a knowing smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. So, he said just loud enough for Shane to hear, you bring extra socks? Shane snorted, shaking his head. Man, fuck you. Loran chuckled, leaning back against the bulkhead. Just saying Sarge drilled it into our heads for a reason. Shane sighed, patting his rucksack. Yeah, I got the damn socks. Good, Loran said, smirk still in place. Wouldn't want your ass bitching about blisters halfway through deployment. Shane rolled his eyes, but he grinned anyway. The engines roared louder, the aircraft shuddering as the last of the guys strapped in. A few of them crossed themselves, others adjusted their gear. Tanner muttered something about finally getting some shut-eye. Shane exhaled, tightening his straps. Loran nudged his shoulder, nodding toward the open cargo ramp as it began to close. Guess this is it, Loran said. Shane nodded. Yeah. The ramp sealed shut, locking them in, and with that, they were off.